I paid for everything, but my mill kicked me out, so I left and now they're screwed. I'll never forget the moment when I realized they had locked me out. It was one of those long days at work where everything went wrong. You know, when you're just counting down the minutes to go home and relax, maybe throw on some sweatpants and watch something dumb on TV. Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. But when I got home and tried to put my key in the lock, it wouldn't turn. At first I thought maybe I was just being stupid or tired, so I tried again. Nope, still not working. My key just wasn't fitting. That's when I noticed something weird on the ground next to me. My stuff. Like, my actual stuff. There was a suitcase, a couple of bags filled with clothes, and a box with random things from the house, just sitting there on the front step like garbage someone was too lazy to take out. I just stood there for a minute, staring at it all, trying to process what was happening. I could feel my face getting hot, and not in a good way. I tried the key again, jiggling it like maybe I could force it open if I just tried hard enough. But no, the lock wouldn't budge, and that's when it hit me. They changed the locks on me. My heart dropped into my stomach. I felt this wave of anger and embarrassment hit me all at once. Like, seriously? They couldn't even give me a heads up? They didn't say anything. Just threw my stuff out like I was some stranger they didn't care about. I bent down, picking through the bags to see what they had thrown out. There was my laptop, stuffed into a bag with some of my clothes, not even wrapped or protected. My makeup, shoes, random toiletries, just all tossed together like it didn't matter. I found some of my more personal things too, like my journals and old photos, which really stung. I mean, it's one thing to kick me out, but to just toss my stuff like this? It felt like a slap in the face. I tried calling Tom, my husband. No answer. I called again, and it went straight to voicemail. I wasn't really surprised. This was just like him, avoiding confrontation whenever things got tough. But still, I stood there for a few minutes, staring at my phone, half expecting him to suddenly call back or text and say, "Oh, there's been a mistake. Come inside." But of course, that didn't happen. I was furious. Like my blood was boiling. But there was also this sinking feeling in my gut, like maybe I should have seen this coming. Looking back, the signs were there. The way his mom and sister Catherine treated me like I didn't exist unless they needed something from me. Tom had been different lately too, distant. He'd stopped coming to bed early, spent more time with his family than with me, and barely talked to me about anything that mattered. But I guess I was just hoping it was a rough patch or something, that things would get better eventually. But this? Changing the locks and throwing my stuff out like I didn't even live there? It was so cold. It was like they were sending a clear message. We don't need you anymore. I gathered what I could, stuffing the bags and boxes into the back seat of my car. I was shaking with anger, but I didn't cry. Not then. I was too mad to cry. I just wanted to get away from there as fast as I could. But while I was packing up, I found something that made my heart sink even further. A note. It was sitting on top of one of the boxes, half crumpled, like it had been thrown on there last minute. It read, "Don't come back. We don't want you here anymore." No name, no explanation, just that cold, cruel sentence scribbled on a piece of paper. I stared at it for what felt like forever, my brain struggling to wrap around the fact that my husband, the man I married, could let this happen. I always knew his mom and sister had it out for me. They never liked me. But I never thought Tom would just let them kick me out like this, without so much as a conversation, I got in the car, slamming the door harder than I meant to, and just sat there for a minute. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles were white. I felt like I could scream, but what good would that do? Yelling at a locked door wasn't going to fix this mess, and I didn't even know where to go. I didn't want to call my parents and admit that my marriage was falling apart like this, but at the same time, where else was I supposed to go? After a few deep breaths, I knew I had no other option. I was going to have to go back to my parents' place, swallow my pride, and tell them what happened. I hadn't been back there in years, not since I married Tom and moved out. The thought of it made me feel small, like a failure. The drive to my parents' house was brutal. I was trying to keep myself together, but every time I hit a red light, I found myself staring blankly out the window, just thinking about how everything had gone so wrong. How did I let it get to this point? Was I just stupid for not seeing this coming? When I finally pulled up to their house, I sat in the car for a few minutes, just staring at the front door. My parents had no idea I was coming, and I wasn't ready for the conversation that was about to happen. I was embarrassed. I felt like I had to explain how my whole life just blew up, and I wasn't even sure where to start. Eventually, I got out of the car, grabbed a few bags, and walked up to the door. My heart was pounding, and for a second I almost turned around and drove away, but I couldn't. I had nowhere else to go. So, I knocked. My mom answered the door, and the look on her face said it all. She took one look at me and the bags in my hands, and without even asking a question, she stepped aside to let me in. "What happened?" she asked softly. I couldn't even get the words out at first. My throat felt tight, and for the first time since I saw my stuff dumped on the front step, I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "They kicked me out," I finally managed to say, my voice breaking. She didn't say anything right away. She just pulled me into a hug, and that was it. That's when I lost it. I broke down right there in the doorway, my face buried in her shoulder, crying like a little kid. I hated that I was crying, but I couldn't stop. All the anger and frustration just came pouring out, and I didn't know how to hold it back anymore. "I don't even know what happened," I mumbled through the sobs. "They just threw my stuff out and locked me out. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." My mom just held me tighter. "You're staying here," she said firmly. "You don't have to go back there." And that's when it hit me. I wasn't going back. Not Eve. After the initial shock of being kicked out, settling back in at my parents' house was, well, weird to say the least. I mean, it wasn't like I hadn't been there in years, but it definitely wasn't home to me anymore. I felt like I'd moved on, you know? Like I had grown past living under my parents' roof, and here I was, dragging bags of my stuff back in like I'd regressed to some younger version of myself. The first night back was uncomfortable. My old room was mostly untouched since I left, which made it feel even more strange. It was like I was stepping back into the past. Same bed, same posters on the wall, same everything. The only difference was me. I wasn't the same person who had moved out and married Tom. Now I was the woman whose marriage was probably falling apart, who had been kicked out of her house and didn't know what the hell to do next. I unpacked a few things, just enough to get by for the night. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking around, and couldn't help but feel this overwhelming sense of failure. Like, how did I end up here? I had been so sure when I married Tom that we'd build this life together, and now it was crumbling right in front of me. My mom knocked on the door later that night. "Can I come in?" she asked, poking her head around the door. I nodded, not really in the mood to talk, but knowing I couldn't avoid it forever. She sat down next to me and gave me that look only moms can give, the one where they're worried but trying not to show it too much. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. I shrugged, still processing everything. "I don't even know what to say, Mom. It all happened so fast. One minute I'm at work, and the next I come home, and all my stuff is on the front porch like I don't even live there anymore." Her eyes softened. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I don't understand why they would do something like that to you. You've always been so good to them." That hit me harder than I expected, because she was right. I had been good to them. I had bent over backward for Tom's family, always helping out when they needed it, paying for things when they couldn't afford it. And for what? To get kicked out without a second thought? "I thought I was doing everything right," I said quietly. "I mean, I worked hard, paid for everything, helped out whenever they needed it, and this is what I get in return?" She put her hand on mine, giving it a squeeze. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetie. Sometimes people take advantage of the ones who are kind to them. It's not your fault." I nodded, but I didn't feel any better. My head was still swimming with questions, mostly about Tom. Why hadn't he stopped this? Why didn't he stand up for me? And why was he so comfortable letting his mom and sister treat me like I didn't matter? It felt like I didn't know him anymore. The next few days were a blur of awkward conversations and trying to figure out my next steps. My parents were great, but I could tell they didn't know what to do with me being back. I hadn't lived with them in years, and we were all kind of feeling our way around this new situation. I didn't tell them everything right away. I was still trying to process it all myself, but eventually my dad sat me down one morning. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and he had that serious look on his face, the one that told me he wasn't going to let me get away with avoiding the topic anymore. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, stirring his coffee. "Are you going to go back and try to fix things with Tom?" I stared down at my mug, not really wanting to answer that question. The truth was, I didn't know. I had been married to Tom for 2 years, and now everything felt so broken. I didn't even know where to start. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't even know if I want to go back. It feels like he's been letting his mom and sister run our lives for a while now, and I'm just tired. I'm tired of feeling like I don't matter to him, like I'm just there to pay the bills and keep things going while they all do whatever they want." My dad frowned. "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot of weight on your own. That's not how marriage is supposed to be." I sighed, feeling the weight of his words. I know. I guess I just kept hoping things would get better. But they didn't. He didn't say anything for a while, just took a sip of his coffee and nodded. Then he looked at me, his expression softening. Emily, you don't have to go back if you don't want to. You know that, right? You deserve to be with someone who values you, who stands by you. If Tom's not that person, then maybe it's time to think about what's best for you. I hadn't thought about it like that before. I guess I had been so focused on making things work that I didn't stop to think about what I wanted. I'd been so caught up in trying to keep the peace with Tom's family that I hadn't even considered whether staying in that marriage was what I actually wanted. But now that my dad said it, I realized he was right. I didn't have to go back. I didn't have to keep putting up with Tom's family's crap or being treated like I was just a convenient wallet for them to rely on. I had options, and I needed to start thinking about them. That day, I took a long walk around my old neighborhood, just trying to clear my head. I hadn't been back there in so long that it felt strange to see how little had changed. The same old houses, the same streets I used to ride my bike on as a kid. It was comforting in a way, but also kind of bittersweet. I wasn't the same person who had grown up here. By the time I got back to my parents' house, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to rush back to Tom. I wasn't going to let his family guilt me into anything. I needed time to figure things out, and I was going to take it. That night, I told my parents that I wasn't planning on going back anytime soon. They were supportive, of course, but I could tell they were worried. I was too, honestly. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life again. It was a small step, but it was mine, and that was enough for now. The days after deciding not to go back to Tom passed slowly, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. It was weird because, on one hand, I felt like I was regaining control of my life, but on the other, there was this nagging guilt in the back of my mind, like I should have been trying harder to make things work. You know that feeling when you leave something behind, but you're not 100% sure you're doing the right thing? Yeah, it was like that. But every time I thought about going back, I remembered all the crap I put up with from his mom and Catherine. I'd bent over backward to help them out, and they never once showed me an ounce of respect. Like it didn't matter how much I did for them. They'd still look down on me or make some passive-aggressive comment about me working and not being a proper wife. And Tom? He just let it happen. It was like he was fine with them treating me like a guest in my own home. It's funny, though. The more I stayed at my parents' place, the clearer everything became. You know when you're so deep in something that you can't really see what's going on until you step back? That's exactly what happened to me. I realized I had been ignoring so many red flags with Tom and his family because I wanted to believe things would get better. One night, about a week after I'd settled back at my parents' place, my phone buzzed while I was watching some mindless show on TV. I grabbed it, expecting another random spam call or something. But nope, it was Tom. Just seeing his name pop up on my screen made my stomach twist. I didn't answer it right away. I wasn't ready. I mean, what was I supposed to say? I had no idea if he was calling to apologize or to guilt-trip me into coming back. I let it go to voicemail, but he didn't leave one. My phone buzzed again with a text. "We need to talk, please." I stared at the message for a solid minute, my heart pounding in my chest. He didn't even apologize, just, "We need to talk." After everything, that's all he had to say? I didn't reply. I couldn't. I knew if I did, I'd probably end up getting pulled back into that mess, and I wasn't ready to face that yet. Instead, I tossed my phone onto the couch and went outside to clear my head. The air was cool, and it felt good to just be outside, away from everything. I sat down on the steps of my parents' porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. I used to sit out here all the time when I was a teenager, just thinking about life, wondering what the future would hold. Now, here I was, 35 years old, back at my parents' house, trying to figure out what the hell my next move was. I heard the door creak open behind me, and my dad stepped out. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down next to me, like he knew I needed some space. After a minute, he glanced over and asked, "You okay?" I shrugged. Tom texted me. He nodded like he was expecting it. What did he say? "He wants to talk," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I meant it to. But he didn't apologize. He just said we need to talk. My dad sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "That doesn't surprise me. You don't have to talk to him if you're not ready, Emily. You know that, right?" "I know," I said, but it didn't really feel like I knew. I mean, part of me wanted to just call him and scream. Ask him why he didn't stop his mom and Catherine from treating me like dirt. Ask him why he let things get so bad. But the other part of me didn't want to deal with it. I was tired. I was so tired of fighting for something that felt broken. "You've always been too forgiving," my dad said after a while, breaking the silence. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but sometimes people take advantage of that. I swallowed hard. He was right, but hearing it out loud made it sting a little more. I'd spent so long trying to make everyone else happy, bending over backward to keep the peace. And for what? To get kicked out of my own house? I feel like I wasted so much time trying to fix things, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't even know why I stayed as long as I did. You stayed because you cared, my dad said, giving me a small smile. But caring doesn't mean you have to keep putting yourself last. His words hit me harder than I expected. I had been putting myself last. For 2 years, I had been so focused on keeping Tom's family happy, making sure everything ran smoothly, that I completely lost sight of what I wanted. We sat there for a while, just watching the sky turn from orange to purple, the quiet settling between us in a way that felt comforting. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to have all the answers. I didn't feel like I had to rush into anything. The next day, I finally texted Tom back. I kept it short and to the point. I'm not ready to talk right now. That was it. No explanation, no long-winded response. Just the truth. He didn't reply right away, which I expected, but a few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a longer message. He apologized, sort of. He said he was sorry for what happened, but he didn't take responsibility. He blamed his mom and sister, like they were the ones who changed the locks and threw my stuff out while he had no control over anything. I wasn't surprised. Tom had always been good at deflecting blame, making it seem like he was just caught up in the middle of everything when, in reality, he was just too scared to stand up to his family. I didn't reply to that message either. I needed more time. And honestly, I didn't want to get sucked back into his excuses. I wasn't ready to forgive him, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on myself. I took long walks, spent time with my parents, and started thinking about what I wanted for the future. It felt strange to actually consider what I wanted for a change. I hadn't done that in a long time. I realized that, for the first time in years, I had the chance to build a life that wasn't centered around making other people happy. It was terrifying, but also kind of exciting. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to the way things were. A couple of weeks went by after Tom's weak apology text, and things were finally starting to feel normal again. Well, a new kind of normal, I guess. I was getting used to living at my parents' place, and honestly, it was kind of nice not having to constantly deal with the stress of Tom and his family. I could focus on myself for once, without someone constantly asking for money or making snide remarks about how I wasn't doing enough. But even though I was feeling better, I knew there was a conversation coming. I couldn't just avoid Tom forever. As much as I didn't want to, I had to deal with the mess, and that meant talking to him eventually. Part of me dreaded it because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. The other part of me was kind of curious to see what he'd say now that he didn't have his mom and sister around to back him up. One morning, after avoiding it for way too long, I finally texted him back. "We can talk. When are you free?" I could almost feel my phone buzzing with tension as I waited for his response. It didn't take long. "I can come over tonight," he replied. Perfect. Not because I wanted to see him, but because it meant I could get this over with and start figuring out what came next. I spent the rest of the day feeling a weird mix of nervousness and relief. I wasn't sure how the conversation would go, but at least I'd finally be facing it head-on. That evening, Tom showed up at my parents' house, and I could feel my heart racing as I saw him walk up the driveway. It was strange seeing him there. He looked the same, but something felt off. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't seen him in weeks, or maybe it was the fact that the last time I did, he and his family had basically kicked me out. When he knocked on the door, my mom gave me a look. "You want me to stick around?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I'll be okay. I need to do this." She squeezed my hand before heading upstairs, and I took a deep breath before opening the door. Tom stood there, looking a little awkward, like he didn't know how to start the conversation either. "Hey," he said, shuffling his feet a bit. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside so he could come in. I led him into the living room, and we sat down on opposite sides of the couch. The silence was heavy, and I could feel the tension building. "So," I started, trying to get the ball rolling, "what do you want to talk about?" He cleared his throat, glancing down at his hands before looking back up at me. "I'm sorry for what happened. I know things got out of hand." "Out of hand?" I raised an eyebrow. "Tom, you let your mom and sister throw me out of the house. They changed the locks on me and you didn't do anything about it. That's more than just out of hand." He flinched a little at my words, but I wasn't going to sugarcoat it for him. He needed to hear how messed up the whole situation was. "I know," he said, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when he was uncomfortable. "I should have handled it better. I should have, I don't know, done something." "Yeah, you should have," I shot back, feeling the anger rising in my chest. "Why didn't you, Tom? Why didn't you stop them?" He looked down at the floor, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know what to do. My mom and Catherine, they were just so adamant about everything. I didn't know how to stand up to them." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You didn't know how to stand up to them? You're my husband, Tom. You were supposed to stand up for me, not just let them walk all over me and throw me out like I didn't even matter." He didn't say anything for a minute, just sat there looking defeated. I could feel the frustration bubbling up inside me. This was the guy I had been married to for 2 years? The guy who couldn't even stand up to his own family when they were treating me like garbage? "You let them treat me like an outsider," I said, my voice shaking. "You let them walk all over me and you did nothing." He finally looked up at me, his eyes full of guilt. I know I screwed up, Emily. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix it." I sighed, leaning back against the couch. I was so tired of fighting for a relationship where I was the only one trying. "I don't think you can fix it," I said quietly. His face fell, and for a second I almost felt bad. But then I reminded myself of everything that had happened, everything I had put up with for so long, and how little he had done to make it right. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," I continued, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "I've been thinking a lot these past few weeks, and I realized that I've been putting up with so much crap from your family because I kept hoping you'd step in and make it better. But you didn't. And now I just don't know if there's anything left to fix." He didn't say anything for a long time, just sat there staring at the floor. I could see the wheels turning in his head, but I wasn't sure if he was actually processing what I was saying or just trying to figure out how to respond. "Emily, I want to fix this. I know I've been a terrible husband. I let my family come between us, and I didn't stand up for you like I should have. But I don't want to lose you." I felt a pang of sadness, but also frustration. How many times had I heard this before? How many times had he promised to make things better, only to let his mom and sister continue treating me like a stranger in my own home? "I don't know if I can believe that anymore," I said, shaking my head. "I've given you so many chances, Tom, and every time it's the same thing. You say you'll change, but nothing ever does." He looked up at me, desperation in his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll talk to my mom and Catherine. I'll set boundaries. I'll make sure they respect you." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same person who had been willing to bend over backward to make this relationship work. I had started to realize that maybe I deserved better. Maybe I deserved someone who didn't have to be convinced to stand up for me. "I need time," I said finally, standing up. "I can't make any decisions right now. But I need you to understand that things can't go back to the way they were. Not after everything that's happened." He stood up too, looking lost. "I understand. Just please don't give up on us yet." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I really believed it. "We'll see." After Tom left that night, I felt like I could finally breathe again. It was strange, though. You'd think I'd feel some sense of closure or maybe even relief, but I was mostly just tired. Not the kind of tired where you need a nap, but the kind where you're emotionally drained, like your brain's been running on full speed for too long, and now it's out of gas. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I'd said to him. "We'll see." What did that even mean? Deep down, I knew it was probably over. I just couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. Saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that kind of finality yet. I guess part of me was still holding on to the idea that maybe he could change, that maybe things could somehow magically get better. But I knew better than to rely on maybes. In the days that followed, I kept my distance. I didn't reach out to Tom, and he didn't text me either. Honestly, that was a relief. I needed space to figure things out on my own, without his family's influence, without the weight of their expectations always hanging over me. For the first time in a long time, I was starting to feel like I could make decisions for me. But then came the questions. My mom, bless her, had been pretty patient up to this point, giving me time to sort through things without pushing too hard. But one morning, after a few weeks had passed, she couldn't hold it in anymore. "So, what's next?" she asked, sitting down at the kitchen table across from me. It wasn't accusatory or anything, but I could tell she was getting anxious about where all this was headed. I shrugged, not really sure how to answer that. I don't know yet, I said honestly. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. She nodded, but I could tell she was biting her tongue. She'd always been one to offer advice, but this time she seemed to be holding back, waiting for me to ask for help. I appreciated that, even if I wasn't ready for it just yet. I know you'll figure it out, she said softly, giving me a reassuring smile. Just remember, you don't have to rush anything. I smiled back, though my mind was still spinning with 100 different thoughts. It was comforting to know my parents were in my corner, but at the same time, I didn't want to lean on them forever. I had always prided myself on being independent, and even though this whole situation with Tom had thrown me off balance, I wanted to get back to standing on my own 2 feet again. A few more days passed, and I started thinking more seriously about what I wanted. The reality was, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to be in that marriage anymore. I mean, sure, Tom had said all the right things during our conversation, but actions speak louder than words, right? And his actions had consistently shown that he wasn't willing to stand up for me when it mattered. One afternoon, while I was out running errands, I found myself parked outside a coffee shop, just staring out the window, thinking about everything. What if I left him for good? What would that look like? I didn't have kids with him, so that was one less complication, but the thought of going through a divorce was still pretty daunting. It's not like anyone dreams of getting married only to have it end like this. But then, I thought about how much I'd already given up, how much I'd sacrificed for him and his family, and how little they'd appreciated any of it. It wasn't just about the money, although that was a big part of it. It was the emotional exhaustion, the feeling of constantly giving and getting nothing in return. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old texts between Tom and me. I noticed a pattern. Whenever I brought up how I was feeling, he'd deflect. Whenever I asked him to step up, he'd promise things would change, but they never did. It was like looking at the relationship through a new lens. All those little moments where I thought things would get better, where I made excuses for him, now they just felt like proof that I had been fooling myself for too long. That's when I realized I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep hanging on to the idea of what I hoped our marriage could be. I had to face what it actually was, a relationship where I was doing all the work and he was just along for the ride. I knew what I had to do, but it didn't make it any easier. The next morning, I sat down with my parents and told them what I'd been thinking. I think I'm going to leave him, I said quietly, not sure how they'd react. My mom gave me that same soft, reassuring look she'd been giving me for weeks. I'm proud of you, she said, her voice gentle but firm. It takes a lot of courage to make a decision like that. My dad, who had been mostly silent during this whole ordeal, nodded in agreement. You've done everything you could, Emily. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. Hearing them say that was like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. It was the validation I didn't even realize I needed. A few days later, I called Tom. It wasn't a long conversation. I told him I needed to move on, that I didn't see how we could fix things, and that I wanted to start the process of separating. He was quiet for a moment, and then he just said, I get it. I wasn't expecting that. Part of me had braced for him to argue or beg me to stay, but he didn't. Maybe he knew deep down that this was the only way forward for both of us. The next few weeks were filled with the practical stuff, figuring out what to do with our things, sorting through the paperwork, all the not-so-fun details that come with ending a marriage. It wasn't easy, but every step felt like I was getting closer to reclaiming my life. It's weird, though. As sad as it was to close that chapter, I didn't feel as devastated as I thought I would. Instead, I felt free, like I was finally taking control of my life again instead of just going through the motions. And maybe that's what this whole experience taught me, that sometimes you have to lose something to find yourself again. I wasn't the same person I was when I married Tom. I had changed, grown stronger, and now I was ready to move forward on my own terms.